I don't know if Tech has another level they can hit. If they do, we're talking about top 5 team in the country. That's scary, right? Beyond just the Big 12, we're talking about a college football playoff contender.
Is the Big 12 a 2-team race? We'll have the answer for you at the end of this trending edition of the PHNX Sun Devil Show. Anthony Totri, Erik Ruby, 4 teams currently tied atop the Big 12 standings. Still early in the college football season as it relates to conference play. You've got Texas Tech, Arizona State, BYU, and Cincinnati. Erik, just like we all predicted at the start of the season.
Man. First of all, Arizona State, Texas Tech, yes, right? These are 2 teams that going into the season, it was like, okay, if Texas Tech's power of greed instead of power of friendship pays off, they'll certainly be contending at the top of the Big 12. Arizona State, defending Big 12 champions, hadn't lost a home game all last season, and now has the longest conference winning streak of anybody in Power 4. Those are 2 teams that you absolutely expected to be in this conversation. BYU is an interesting one, obviously, because they went through some pretty massive changes in the offseason, lost some personnel, but
Jake Retzlaff
they do see themselves as now the second highest ranked Big 12 team in the AP Top 25. Cincinnati's the real one that kind of came out of nowhere. And of course, this following up on their massive win against Iowa State. Now, Iowa State wasn't exactly Iowa State.
No, but they had a fun one against Kansas that they won on the road too.
That's true, right? But these are close games that Cincinnati has still been able to pull out, and some of the best games in the Big 12 so far this season. So yeah, I see 2 teams that I expected to be there, and 2 teams that I didn't. And I love that. I think that's this conference, just when you boil it down, is there's always going to be some unexpected element. Last year it was Arizona State. Maybe this year, to a lesser extent, it's Cincinnati.
At least right now.
At least right now.
Brennan Sorsby is on an absolute tear. Cincinnati looks legit as it stands right now. They got pretty much a cakewalk over the next 2 weeks. I believe they got UCF and then Oklahoma State. So if you take care of business there and we're staring at the Bearcats at 4-0, then maybe that's like a legit conversation. As it relates to BYU, I know we've had this same kind of agreement on, what we think of BYU to this point. Not necessarily a team that deserves to be considered a top 15 team in the country. I believe they stand at 18 right now. Haven't really played anybody up to this point, not even in conference play. They haven't really had to face one of the juggernauts or top level teams in this conference. So I think we're still awaiting that. But as it relates to the 2 top teams in this conference, Texas Tech, who went on the road with their backup quarterback at a certain point, smacked around a really good Utah team. And then you've got Arizona State that, if you take away the Mississippi State loss, we're talking about a team that shut down 2 of the best, if not the best, aerial attacks in college football to this point in the season. You don't lose to Mississippi State. We're talking about the Sun Devils being a top 7 team in college football right now.
Yeah, obviously the Mississippi State loss was tough for ASU, who now sits at number 21 after a bye week. When you look at the top 4 as a whole, it does feel like there's a pretty steep drop-off between Texas Tech and Arizona State and BYU, Cincinnati. And so looking at like these top-end teams, I think Texas Tech feels like we've seen them hit their stride, right? I feel like we have seen Texas Tech play their best football. Not that they can't continue to play that.
The betting favorite, as it stands right now, to win the Big 12 championship.
And if they weren't, I'd be like, what the hell are we doing
I
here?
believe I saw it as of this morning. They are officially now minus odds to win the Big 12 championship.
They're a top 10 team in the country, right? And Utah was a team that was ranked in the top 16. They were 16 when Texas Tech played them, and they were 17. They whooped up on them on the road with the backup quarterback.
24-point fourth quarter in that
game. Insane. So I think Tech deservedly has that praise and that view right now. I don't know if Tech has another level they can hit. If they do, we're talking about top 5 team in the country. That's scary, right? Beyond just the Big 12, we're talking about a college football playoff contender. In Texas Tech.
I think we're already talking about that.
I'm not like a contender in the playoff to go on a run.
Yeah.
Right? Anybody who wins the conference, and I think Tech is obviously squarely in that conversation, is a college football playoff contender. Arizona State's fascinating, though, and I don't just say that because, we cover them, but they're fascinating because I do think there's that clear-cut drop-off. I do think that they've played like a great team in this conference, but they've left so much on the table.
Yeah.
I don't think you could point to a single half and said Arizona State played their best football that half. Comprehensively, the best that they can get. I think you can with Texas Tech. And maybe Tech fans will disagree. You can let us know in the comments below if you feel like there's another level that Tech can hit. But I feel like ASU is not only in that top category, but they have a lot of room to grow in that top category as well as the season goes on.
Yeah, and that's what I think is the fascinating part of the Sun Devils to this point in the year, because you can look at it one of two ways, right? You can look at it and say, man, Arizona State's 4-1 on the season. Last 2 weeks, before the bye week, they beat TCU at home 27-24. Then the week before, they were in Waco against a red-hot quarterback in Sawyer Robertson, and they won 27-24, right? So they're still 4-1 with leaving all this on the table. Or you could look at it with maybe glass half empty vibes, and you could say it's a team that's 4-1 that can't figure it out up to this point in the year. I feel like we're going to learn a lot, though, about Arizona State specifically of all four of those teams that we just discussed this week, because you're on the road, prime time, against a good Utah team.
Yeah, a Utah team that I think if you were to go beyond who's undefeated in the conference and who could contend and then push themselves back up, if a BYU, if a Cincinnati, if an ASU, if a Texas Tech get a loss or two here through the end of Big 12 play, or I guess the rest of Big 12 play, because we're only a couple weeks in, Utah, I think, is squarely in that conversation, right? Obviously, their only loss coming to the top 10 team in the country. Their only loss comes to the top 10 team in the country. They haven't played anybody, though, besides that. I mean, they have not played anybody. Arizona State's schedule clears that. So I think you're going to learn a lot about Utah. You're going to learn a lot about ASU as well this weekend. I think whoever wins that game is going to put themselves in a pretty square position to be in contention, to be in that Big 12 championship game. And I think even more so than what we could see from a BYU or what we could see from Cincinnati, because we saw BYU last year record-wise, right? Be a top 10 team in the country, right? Be undefeated, be really damn good, and then completely fall off the brakes.
Yeah.
Right? Or I don't think that's a saying at all.
Fall off the brakes?
Fall off the brakes.
Yeah, no.
Fall off the horse.
Yeah, there you
fall
go.
Fall off the face of the earth.
I don't know where the brakes
fall
came
off the map.
from.
They hit the brakes.
They hit the brakes.
And then the brakes broke.
Then
and then their car crashed.
That's tough. They fell out of the
car.
car.
And I think Cincinnati is obviously the biggest dark horse here, but next 2 weeks they play UCF.
They should be 4-0.
Who has UCF has more wins than people expect, but they're still not a good football team. Oklahoma State barely has a football team right now. I would argue that they are probably the worst team in the Power 4 right now, simply because half of their roster just left because they fired Gundy.
Yeah.
So
they were bad with Gundy.
And I feel like we learned a lot against Iowa State, but Iowa State was an injured team. And Kansas, I think Kansas is a very middle-of-the-road team, and they barely beat Kansas, and Jalen Daniels put up 500 yards of offense.
And TCU and Baylor have issues on defense.
And yeah, they do have issues on defense. I think those are a step below Utah. I feel like Utah's kind of in a category of their own. But out of all of the teams, we are going to learn the most about Arizona State and Utah this week. And then the week after that, it's going to be Texas Tech, Arizona State, because I do think that that's going to be the best team that Tech will have played. Obviously, we'll have to see what happens this Saturday. I think the Sun Devils will win, but if Tech is playing still undefeated in the Big 12 ASU team at home, right, at that point ASU a top 20-something team in the country, probably mid-teens, that's going to be the biggest test for Texas Tech. So weeks in the Big 12 could likely determine if this is a two-team race or not.
100%. 1,000%.
100%
ASU.
or 1,000%?
Yeah, both.
Okay.
1,000 and
I want to make sure.
1,100%.
Those are two very different percentages.
Well, it's still 100 all the way around. Come on now.
Yeah.
You get it. Guys, is the Big 12 a two-team race? And are the two teams Texas Tech and Arizona State? Let us know in the comments. Hit that like button. Hit the subscribe button. And for more Arizona State news and notes, check out the PHNX Sun Devils show.